So on that point then, because I think that's very interesting, and I actually do think your argument about the international perspective missing in the discussion is a very, very important one. But I guess some people would essentially push back and say, who's fundamentally responsible for the position of Black African countries in the world today? Now, we can point to historical legacies of colonialism and slavery, but there are also countries, whether that's Singapore or other countries in Asia that experience forms of colonialism, but have actually completely taken responsibility for their societies and transformed their situation economically. So I guess, could you argue that some of the reason why people may have less interest or less sympathy to the international perspective on this is actually because ultimately there's very little that we can do, and who's responsible for the problems today?
That's definitely a valid point. And the arguments I was making in the book were as much for Western audiences as for Black audiences. Okay. It's basically to try and show that, look, this thing we keep on repeating, racism, 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 racism. It's become an almost sort of meaningless word, which means everything and which means nothing. So it's not really helpful in our discussions today in trying to find out actually what is going on. Why is there so much frustration, and what lies at the core of this? Yeah. So I'm trying to show as objectively as I can what lies at the core of this, and then we can now get into who is responsible, who is not, etc. The last thing I am is one of those people who come and say, the only reason Africa is poor today or African nations are poor today is because of colonialism and slavery. That's incorrect, simply. And I write there and I acknowledge there that definitely, post-colonial Africa has by and large been a failure. That's the truth. And a lot of those failings have to do with the failings of African governments that have ruled African countries on the ground. This is undeniable. And this is something I also think we should be talking about more within also this race debate and that international perspective. Yeah. So that's what I would say to the Black audiences, that look, at the end of the day, we can't expect anybody to come and solve our problems. Nobody's going to come from heaven, or we say we don't want the white saviors. So we definitely can't say we want the white people to come and save us from our problems. So that's not going to happen.